All right. It's my pleasure to introduce the guest speaker for tonight. So first of all, my throat is, I don't know what happened. I'm just getting something there, but hopefully we'll get through. You're going to learn some things tonight, hopefully you didn't know about me. The first one is that I'm truly by nature an introvert. You're laughing, but ask my wife, right? It's true, like, when I'm in rabbi mode, I love doing what I do. I love the people around me. But when I'm not doing it, put me in a corner and just leave me there. Like, I'm good. Like, I am so good at it in terms of, like, I don't need. And so, as a rabbi, like, I love teaching. I love preaching. And yet, when it's about me is when I'm the most uncomfortable. So I just want you to know that. Those of you who know me know when it comes to me, I'm really bad at taking compliments. And any of you said, like, Rabbi, so nice. Like, I don't know what to say back. And so I'm just telling you, this is an uncomfortable moment for me to talk about myself. So I want to begin with that. Second of all, I want to tell you that this was really hard to prepare tonight. And I'll tell you why. Because to reflect on one's life. The other thing I'll share with you when we talk at the table is that I don't, like, some people are like, are you looking forward to to finishing your full-time duty? And my response is, like, I don't get excited about things, or I don't feel them until they actually happen. Like, I don't know if any of you are like that. Like, when I go on a trip, like, it's like, I don't, like, until I'm on the way to the airport. Like, people are excited, like, 2 weeks before, you're going on safari. Oh, thank you. Oh, I love it. You're going on safari. I go, like, yeah. I go, like, until I'm at the airport. So I haven't thought about this. And preparing for night really has forced me to think about almost 40 years of being a rabbi and what it's meant. And so I'm going to tell you, as always, I feel inadequate in terms of what I'm going to share. And feel like this is the beginning of me reflecting on my life as a rabbi so far. So I'm going to start with my rabbinical school interview, and then I'm going to work back to how I got there, and then we'll move forward into my rabbinic life. What time we got? Oh, by the way, Seth is going crazy back there because I'm moving around. Hey, Seth, how you doing? He's on a camera. He's trying to follow me. My first rabbinical school interview, I was rejected for rabbinical school. I was rejected, and they were right. Why? Because I didn't know really why I wanted to be a rabbi. Right? You think sometimes you know what you want. You think sometimes you're prepared for something. You think like you're there, and then when you're there, you realize, I'm not ready yet. Now, by the way, they let us, in those days, you could start the program, and it's sort of what do you call it, on, not probation or something, but, to see how you're doing, and then you can re-interview a year later. So I went back in a year later, and the question that really threw me off is, why do you want to become a rabbi? Like, that's really what threw me off. And I said, I love being Jewish. And they go, yeah. Right? By the way, I'll tell you later that I didn't want to become a pulpit rabbi, even at the very beginning. And so the following year when I was there, I said, it feels like something has been moving my life in this direction, and I didn't recognize it until this moment. Right? Like, there was a force at work. In the Christian clergy, they use the expression, I got the calling. That's very common. You know that. In Christian clergy, yeah, I got the call when I was, a certain age or something. I was called upon. And the Jewish tradition, we don't talk about that, but there's much like Mordecai Kaplan's force. There was something that was moving in that direction. And yet, I will tell you, we're talking, so I'm going off script here, but this will tell you about being a rabbi. I never thought I was going to be a rabbi in high school, for sure. No one ever would have thought. In fact, first time I was at Valley Beth Shalom in 1988, and one of my friends from high school, Russ Krasnoff was his name. Remember Russ Krasnoff? And I'm walking around. Now, this is like big white gown, right? And I've got all four, and we're walking around the Torah, and I walk by, and I hadn't seen him in 10 years. And he looks like, goes, "You're that Rabbi Vogel?" like the last place that he expected me. And so how did I get there to that moment I wanted to become a rabbi? So I grew up in a typical West Coast, by the way, that's important, clarification, as opposed to East Coast conservative family. Those of you from the East Coast know what I mean. Right? It's very different West Coast conservative Judaism. So grew up very typical, didn't have a kosher home. I had wonderful Bubbi Zayda who were wonderful inspiration in terms of a deep connection to what felt like an authentic Jewish life, if you will. I attended religious school we called it Hebrew school in those days, at VJCC, which became Adat Ariel. The Dieber Chapel is my great uncle Joe Dieber. So my family had great roots there. I had my bar mitzvah there. An important moment was a teacher by the name of Moshe Melnick. I don't know if any of you know from Adat Ariel Moshe Melnick, who passed away some time ago. But Moshe Melnick, who eventually became principal, for some reason took a liking to me, and my family could never afford to send me to Camp Ramah before, and he arranged to give me a scholarship that sent me to Camp Ramah. Now, if you want to know the importance of being able to provide scholarships and touch people's lives in those early stages, that was an important moment, that experience. And I think I was 10 years old, came back, didn't go back to Camp Ramah because, again, my family couldn't afford it. Later on, I went to LA Hebrew High School. Right, who's from LA Hebrew High here? Raise your hands, all right? Right, LA Hebrew High. Now, why did I go to LA Hebrew High is a good question. I didn't want to do Jewish studies, but my mother was a smart woman of blessed memory. She said, and you know my mother, you knew her, and she said, if you go to LA Hebrew High, I'll let you go on a trip to Israel after your 10th grade year. But you have to go, you're only going to Israel if you go to LA Hebrew High. I go, okay, I'm going. So I went and then became involved with an amazing community. Ended up at age 15 being a Madornik at Camp Ramah in those early days of being a Mador, when you were kind of on staff, but you were just learning, and that was a powerful experience. Went to Israel on Ulpan. That was probably the moment where I came back keeping kosher at age 15. I came back keeping kosher. My parents did not have a kosher home by any stretch of any imagination. And as my mother, who wanted to encourage it, tried to do her best. I had my food, they had their food. Eventually, my father, who is the most reluctant, but is a beautiful soul, who's 98 years old right now, and we had treif dishes for him eventually. But the house wasn't completely kosher, but it was the ability to explore. Now, I began by I would avoid the forbidden foods after that year. I was just so inspired, and the question was, how do you feel? How many of you went to Israel and were transformed by that experience? How many of you raise your hand? Yeah. So I came, Jewishly, and I came back saying, how do I hold on to that sense of Jewish identity? So that's when I started doing some of those rituals. So I stopped eating pepperoni pizza, no more shrimp. I have not had shrimp since that day. Lobster, which I loved. All those things. My favorite, I will give you a confession, bacon cheeseburgers. Thank you. That's in the world of kashrut, we call that double treif. Because you've mixed meat and milk, and the meat is not kosher, and you've got the pork, and you've got everything going on. That's as bad. So I really went cold turkey on that. But I would eat at McDonald's, but I just wouldn't eat a cheeseburger anymore. But that was the beginning, and I slowly grew into more observance during those years. When I went to Camp Ramah as a Madornik on staff, and then went back, and in fact, 1975, Sherry, that's where you're part of the story, is at Valley Beth Shalom. Sherry and I were teaching assistants. 1975-76. Rob came a little bit later, we think, and joined us. And it was a great time in terms of feeling that Jewish connection. I loved teaching kids. I eventually ended up on the staff of Camp Ramah and went off and teaching at Kol Tikva. They were willing to hire an 18-year-old kid to teach a class. And by the way, there was great pay in those days, and for Hebrew teachers, if you don't know. If you had Jewish credits and everything, it was amazing pay. And so I was living the high life. Well, my friends were making, I don't know, $3.25 an hour. I was making, I think, $25 an hour. Yeah, no, it was unbelievable. And so it was good to be a Jew. It was. And so I. What's the next part of my story is probably my junior year in Israel. I was going to be a business major. I have no idea why. My father was in business, but it felt like I should just do that. Oh, here's a funny part. My mother is a lawyer early on, some of you who knew her, and who was really at the forefront of women being in the field of law. And I always said, she'd say, well, you want to be a lawyer? I said, no, that's just way too much studying. I didn't realize, later on, 3 years of law school, nothing compared to 6 years of rabbinical school. I mean, that was the difference. If you don't know, rabbinical school, in those days, certainly, it was 4 years of undergraduate, and it was then 6 years of a full rabbinical school program. So it's very extensive. So I go off to Israel, and which was another transformative moment, except what was interesting is I was less observant in Israel. I felt, by the way, this is the issue with Israelis, right? When you're in Israel, you feel Jewish. Isn't it interesting? I had this reverse Jewish process. When I came to the States, in order to feel Jewish, I had to do these Jewish things. When I went there, I'm Jewish, right? Give me that bacon cheeseburger. No. Only in Tel Aviv, and it's behind a curtain. When I was just learning Hebrew, I went into a restaurant, and for chicken, I love white meat. And so, I was trying to practice my Hebrew. Some of you know where this is going. And I knew what's a basar lavan. Ma pitom. What are you talking about, basar lavan? So white meat, that's technically how you would say it, is code word for pork. So if you're ever going to a kosher restaurant and you want chicken and you want to practice Hebrew, do not ask for basar lavan, right? And you know this, Minda. You just can't. So I went to Israel, and I came back and decided to change my major from business to education. Right? I wanted to become an educator. So I was at Cal State Northridge for Business School, which is recognized as a great business program. I didn't go to UCLA because I really didn't, it didn't have a business program itself. So and Northridge also has a great education program, but you can't major, at that time, I don't know if you know this, you couldn't major in education. No, it's something new. You had to have a 4-year degree in some other discipline, and then it was a 5th year, Liz, you know this, a 5th-year program that you had to do for a credential, and that's where you had all your education. You had a couple of it. So I decided if I was going to become a Jewish educator, I wanted to have an undergraduate degree in Judaica. So I started attending classes at the University of Judaism of blessed memory. The classes there were all very high level. They didn't have an undergraduate program technically. There were some of you know Craig Taubman also took classes, and we have our undergraduate degrees. I think it was from the Lee College, I think they called it in those days, but there was no official program. You had to take undergraduate at some other college. You could take the Judaic classes there. I decided I wanted to And I did. I took the 5th year of education. They had a 1-year program. Sure, you weren't in that 1-year program where you were. They brought up to UJ, we did Hebrew, we did Judaica and General Studies together. I don't think you were there. There were some who were there. It's a 1-year program. It was remarkable. The UJ brought the staff from Northridge, and they used their staff for the Judaic class, and we had both. And we were trained to be Judaic teachers and general studies. So I did my student teaching. I did it 4th grade at Mayall Elementary School. I taught 4th grade, which I loved. I love 4th graders. Like before they hit the hormones. Like that is the sweet spot of children, those of you who have kids. Right? It's like they don't talk back, but yet they have a sense of humor and they get sarcasm. Like they're at that perfect stage. They turn rotten after that. So I love 4th grade. And then I thought, I'm going to stretch myself. I'd been teaching in Hebrew school, in religious school. I'd been teaching 7th grade. That was like my specialty. I love those kids, right? I was going to beat them into like appreciation. And I loved, like I could connect. I thought, I'm going to stretch myself. And I taught 1st grade. Oh my God. I'll share with you, these are stories I've never shared publicly. I would wake up every morning, and I was so, like, it wasn't for me. And you can't say, like, oh, I'm just done with my student teaching. Thank you very much. It's been fun. I was at Heschel Day School for this. And I'd come in, I would do, all those songs and everything you have to do. And most mornings before I left, I would actually throw up. No. To really... Right? But like I pushed through. I did it. I got my teaching credentials. It was a 5th-year program, and I did Judaica. And then I was accepted into the rabbinical school for that 1st year. And now you're caught up with my life in terms of how do I get into rabbinical school. I didn't think I had the chops to make it through rabbinical school, to tell you the truth. My philosophy class, I want you to understand, I want you to think about this. My philosophy class in New York, I sat between, on my left, I believe, was Rabbi Brad Artson. On my right was Rabbi David Wolpe. Thank you. By the way, Rabbi Naomi Levy was in the corner over there. Right? It was amazing. Like, how do you not feel like an idiot? Right? When you're sitting in the tree, right? How can you not? So I finished 2 years in Los Angeles. You were allowed to do it in those days before Ziegler was around. It's a wonderful, amazing program educating next generation of rabbis. You could do 2 years in LA, and then you could go off to the JTS in New York. But you did a year in Israel before you went off to New York. So we went to Israel. They did a terrible job of onboarding students from LA. Like, we were like the stepchildren. Like, LA, sorry. It was like, they really, like the West Coast, that East Coast exceptionalism and elitism was just unbelievable. And so Rodi was there. Rodi worked with the Ethiopian community there when they the first, I think, arrival of Ethiopian Jews. I mean, literally, you walk in the street and you go like, that looks different. Right? Really, the first time we'd really seen black Jews. And they just showed up in the streets of Israel. And so we applied for student housing, married student housing in New York. We didn't know it. They said, put in your name. And we figured, we're from LA. We're a married couple. Of course we're going to get it. We didn't get it. Now, I'm telling you, we looked at each other, and we said, oh, my God, we're going to be homeless. Nobody said, oh, don't worry. Like, you find a place on Broadway in 115. Like, plenty of the place. That's what we all do. Like, we had no idea. But a week later, there was a notice that went up on the board that said, rabbinic internship, White Plains, New York, includes apartment. I go, that's for me. No, that's why I applied this internship. I was on the education roll, right? That's where I was going. I wanted a PhD in education. I saw a notice that said apartment included. Rabbi came to New York. He interviewed us, and I got the job. I'd never heard of White Plains. How many of you know of White Plains, New York? We'd never been to New York, right? Had you ever been to New York before that? We had never been to New York. I didn't know White Plains was this hotty-toddy place, like posh. I had no idea the synagogue was a nationally recognized synagogue. I just knew we have a place to live. Like, that's all that mattered. And compared to those little hovels that they had in, any of you have been in a New York apartment? Right? Like the kitchen is this size, right? Like this is the kitchen, right? Like everything is really small. And we had a 2-bedroom apartment. I had my office in one room, and we had the bedroom in the other. We had a nice sized, living room, and it was amazing. And so I became a rabbinic intern there. Again, directed towards education. Spent 3 years there. First, I was just a rabbinic intern, which, by the way, they didn't say there was no money for anything else other than the apartment. That part was a little bit deceptive. They said, we got a place for you to live. Thank you. But then I think it was the principal of the religious school passed away, a rabbi. So I ended up helping run the religious school, and I'm still in rabbinical school. And then they needed the youth department to somebody to do it. So I did that by my last year. So I was really working half-time, if not 3/4 time in the synagogue. I was getting great experience. It was an interesting congregation. We'll just leave it there. It's amazing people, and I loved it. That experience led me to want to be a pulpit rabbi. That experience, the relationship that I had with people, and it was a somewhat dysfunctional synagogue with the senior rabbi at the time. And I thought, like, oh my God, if like synagogue life could be like this with this kind of rabbi, imagine like what it could be like with somebody that wasn't like that kind of rabbi. And so I graduate rabbinical school. Really, you tell me if I'm missing anything. Rhodey's pregnant with Talia. And were you pregnant yet? I don't think we started interviewing. You delivered in August, so it wasn't until December? No, by the end you were, but when it first came out, the listings, I said, okay, start applying. The White Plains, New York, they offered me to stay and to be an assistant rabbi. They're going to turn that position into the assistant rabbi position. They wanted me to stay. They actually, and I said, I don't know. And they said, what if we have Rhodey run the preschool there? And I came back to Rhodey. I said, what happened? Like, do you want to stay here? It's a beautiful community. It's really nice, everything. And she said, we're going home. I said, what do you mean? She says, we're going back to LA. And so there was one synagogue that was open at that time, Agura Jewish Center, which later became Beth Chavarim of blessed memory. Right? I applied, so 1988, I was a candidate for that position. And then I arrived at Valley Shalom because of an earthquake. 1987, those of you who were here in LA, October, there's an earthquake. October 1st. Okay. So here's what happened. At Valley Shalom, those of you who've been around long enough, there was Rabbi Showais, there was Rabbi Danzig, who was the associate rabbi, who was the executive director. He moved up to associate rabbi. They hired a new executive director from back east. On October 1st, 1987, this executive director's wife, a couple hours after the earthquake, said, I'm going back home. If you want to stay, that's fine, but I'm gone. He, being a smart husband, left with her. Rabbi Danzig moved down to executive director, and that is why there was an opening for an assistant rabbi at Valley Shalom. Like, you never know, right, what life does in order to create the opportunities. So I interviewed for both positions. I was actually offered both positions. I had to make a choice. Oh, the other part was, Rhodey said, you have to apply in the Valley. I said, you're limiting us a little bit. I said, there's an opening in the Mission Viejo. That year that Rabbi Artson went to Mission Viejo. We were all together, by the way. Rabbi Eli Spitz, Rabbi Artson, and I. We were all friends and all part of the class that wanted to come back to Southern California. I said, Mission Viejo is a great place. No. I said, what if something opens in the city? No. So I'm not sure what insight she has with God, but an earthquake came, and Valley Shalom was my future. Let me talk about experiences of my life. Camp Ramah was certainly an important experience, absolutely. Brandeis Bardeen, was very important. I was at Ramah. Rodi was at Brandeis Bardin. And the only reason I left Ramah is to follow Rodi to Brandeis Bardin. And I was first Judaic director. Those of you who know Barry Lutz, by the way, Rabbi Lutz, who was in Northridge for a long time, he and I shared a room. He was the education director. I was the Judaic director. And then I eventually became the assistant director along with Arthur Pinchov. And then also worked at BCI. I would do services, I would do programs and teaching, and it was a great life. And I learned, what I love about Brandeis Bardin is that it was unaffiliated, and the idea was like we want to reach out to all Jews. We don't define ourselves by a movement per se. Do you know, how many of you have been to Brandeis Bardin? Right? So you know their melodies and prayers that are unique. Do you know that they were written intentionally that way? Max Helfand was hired to create new liturgy so that no movement could claim propriety to their worship experiences at Brandeis Bardin. It was amazing. There were great people there. Dennis Prager had been there. Later on, Deborah Lipstadt was there as well. It was a time they went through a lot of directors. I met some amazing people. I would be remiss not to mention Dr. David Elcott, who was the principal at the education director at Valley Shalom, who really was an inspiration to become a teacher. And so I began, Rabbi Elliot Dorff, I have to mention him. Any of you know Rabbi Elliot Dorff? Oh my God, like the rabbi's rabbi, who has helped initiate more rabbis than I think any other rabbi in the United States, certainly. He's like, he knows how to really encourage and inspire. So I become a pulpit rabbi. I am, here, hold on, let me finish that. Let me talk about what I've learned. And you're going to have time, I hope, to ask questions. And Rodi, you'll give me if it's time, all right? That's great. By the way, I'll share a secret, but none of you can do this, right? Rodi would, like, if I was ever going too long on a sermon, you always want your wife to be able to go like this. Like, she's the one you trust. Right? Like the guy sleeping on the aisle, like that's what they always do. But when your wife tells you it's time to like, so, and that's what she does in my life as well. Rabbi Schulweis, working with him was unbelievable. Unbelievable. When I was meeting with him on the first, I think it was interview weekend, I was in his office. And he had a beautiful office. There was a sitting area, and the phone rang, and he walked over to pick up the phone. Like, we're having a discussion, but he walks over, he picks it up, he goes, "Hi, Cookie." And that's what he called his wife, Malka. It's so sweet, Cookie. Right? And he starts talking. The people over here, the ladies, are going, "Shh!" They're shushing Rabbi Schulweis. Nobody shushes Rabbi Schulweis. I mean, oh my God. And Rabbi Schulweis moved behind the table, sat down on the floor, and started talking on the phone very quietly. I thought, like that's a man of humility. And like many people would think, oh, he's so high and and faluted, and he had such an amazing heart. One Monday morning, I walked into his study, and he's talking on the phone, and he hangs up, and I go, and he looked troubled, he goes like, "What's that?" He goes like, "Somebody from back east called me and was asking questions about what I talked about on Shabbat." Now remember, this is 1990, so we're not like, there's no posting on Facebook or other things, right? And he says like, "How do they know what I talked about on Shabbat?" And there was a pause, and I look at him, and I say, "You are Rabbi Harold Schulweis." He didn't realize that. Isn't that amazing? Like, there was no sense that he was better than any other rabbi. And I learned that, I hope, that sense of humility from him. I learned I'm always prepared. Those of you who know me, like I am always prepared. And Rabbi Schulweis was my mentor. A brilliant man who could get off with speaking off the cuff. Could we all agree? He's known enough to speak off the cuff for 10 years and not have to worry about repeating something. But every time he came to services, even for a little introduction of a prayer, it was in his book. He didn't just do it in the moment. He prepared. And if Rabbi Harold Schulweis prepares, then Rabbi Stewart Vogel better prepare 3 times as hard as Rabbi Harold Schulweis. He was a great leader. He also taught me to make space for other people. He had no ego. It was unbelievable. Somebody gave him a shirt. If you remember that, as long as you remember I'm God, we'll get along fine. And what's really funny is that he wore it self-effacing. He didn't wear it because he really felt he thought it was funny. And so, that's the nature of who he was. But he taught me that the synagogue has space for every professional to have a big personality. And you should not feel diminished or threatened as a rabbi. He never was threatened. In fact, he would always push me forward and give me credit for things and establish my presence. In fact, at Valley Beth Shalom, interesting, they never had the title. It's changed recently, assistant rabbi. Rabbi Schulweis looked at me, he says, you are not ordained as assistant or junior rabbi. You are rabbi. Those of you who know from Temple Aliyah, we never had assistant rabbis. We just had rabbis. And it was a statement in terms of what a rabbi is about. That you don't have to categorize, you don't have to pigeonhole anybody into any place. And so I learned a lot from Rabbi Schulweis. From congregants, oh my God. Really, the life of a rabbi is learning from congregants. You have to know that. So I'm going to share a little bit. I learned about God and life. I've always said that a rabbi experiences more life in 1 year than the average person does in a lifetime. Would you agree with that? I mean, you know what my weeks look like, right? On a Sunday, I could go to a funeral, a wedding, a shiva min, like that's all part of what it means. To get a call and many calls in a day about someone in the hospital. To be dewey when someone's about to die if you can't get there, even now doing it over FaceTime with them, which is remarkable. Right? That is, so as a rabbi, you experience life and you have an option. Either you can keep feeling it or you can cut yourself off from it. Like many doctors who have to cut themselves off from the emotional nature of what they do. But I believe that rabbis who do that can't live up to their full potential as rabbis. So those of you who know me, I can be a blubbering mush, right? I feel the pain, I feel the joy, and so I have learned from all of you. I've gone through miscarriages with congregants. Right? So I remember one after 3, wondering if she'd ever be able to have children. Miracle pregnancies, right, where they really thought that they would never get pregnant at all. And then that great joy, like the biblical idea that it was a blessing from God. The death of an infant, still the hardest thing. And those of you who know that we've had a number of difficult deaths in our congregation, I learned from a little girl named Adina Senensib. Yeah. Some of you from Temple Alley remember her. Adina Senensib, who passed away 21 years ago, I had to look it up, it's hard to imagine, was born with a degenerative defect, right, that allowed her body stayed small, and her organs would continue to grow. She had very small legs. She was in a wheelchair that was electric, and she would go around. Did not expect her to live long, honestly, past, I don't know, who knows, maybe 9, 10. And she had a Mickey Mouse watch. And she was the most joyous little girl. And those of you who remember her, she just brought such light. And I learned so much from her. And we were preparing for the first time to think about how do we have a bat mitzvah, somebody who can't stand up, and what are we going to do and arrange it. As we started thinking about her bat mitzvah at age 12, she passed away. She lived longer than they thought. They appreciated the life she had. There was great sadness, but the way she lived life was an inspiration to me. So, I have to tell you, from all of you, And most of us have had those experiences together of sharing something. And that's where I learn about life. It's about sharing it with you. I've learned to accept that no one's perfect and accept people's imperfections. I've learned to return hate with love. Right? Because hate will never change people. You know that. And I learned that early on. The only way to change people is by showing love to them. That's the only hope. I'll share something with I've never said publicly, is that sometimes the rabbi can become the brunt of many other challenges. By the way, my least favorite issue in synagogue life was not death, by the way. I find such a sacred moment, those of you who I've shared the passing of somebody with, when I sit with a family and we talk about that person, what a sacred moment. Oh, when I get to learn about that person, the impact they've had on people's lives, by the way, and help them struggle through that person's imperfections to really mourn the true sense of who that parent or relative was, like that is such a sacred role. Like, I have no problem with that. The hardest thing as a rabbi, I must share with you, I've never said this publicly, is divorced families. Divorced families. Why? Because the rabbi, the synagogue, is often put in the middle of two warring parties who clearly have not resolved their conflicts. And it's a no-win situation. And those are so complicated. I've had many people, I've become a manifestation of Jewish tradition. I'll share this with you. It's happened within the last year. A woman, I did her parents' wedding. I did her baby naming. I did her bat mitzvah. I did her confirmation. She ended up falling in love with a non-Jewish person, but who was going to convert. Okay? And she came in, and she said, I feel like I've been rejected by my religion, and frankly, I feel like I've been rejected by you. And I started crying. I was crying. And I said, I'm so proud that you want to create a Jewish home, and I want to do whatever I can to support that. And I want to meet him. And by the way, he eventually converted, and they're going to get married. You never know. It's also something I've learned. I'll give you another story. This one's crazy. This is many years ago, somebody who married a Catholic woman, and when they got married, the agreement was that they would raise the kids Catholic. Made that agreement. Baptism, right? I talked to the parents through. I said, look, you have to accept you're going to have Catholic grandchildren. I know it's really hard. You just have to accept. If you're going to accept your son, you have to accept the decision he made. Is it right? Isn't that true? You have to. Can't fight it. You're going to lose a child. A month ago, by the way, I could give you stories just from the last month that would fill a book. But he sent me an email and said, my two girls are involved in softball. They're very involved, and Israel has invited them to play on the national team. I go like, what? So I responded on email. I said, Israel usually requires a letter that states that the child is Jewish by the mother or by conversion, or that they're by the mother or by conversion. And I said, my recollection is, right? My recollection is that the mother's not Jewish and that they were raised Catholic. And he responded, you never know how things turn out. All my children affiliate Jewishly. Now, he asked me to do something that I had never done before, and I don't know if I've done it since. Even though the kids had a baptism, he said, I want to give my children a Jewish name. He said, it's really important to me. I said, why? And he talked about passing on that heritage. He wanted them to have that. I didn't feel comfortable doing it in the sanctuary on a Shabbat, honestly, because of all the conditions. I did it in the sanctuary. I did it in the chapel privately, and I gave them Jewish names. Now, do I think that they grew up to have Jewish identities because of that? I don't think so. But what would that moment have looked like if I had rejected them? And it seems like a strange thing to do, to give kids, right? But those are the questions that rabbis are faced with all the time. All the time. How do you apply tradition to today? How are you going to make it meaningful? How do you not reject people? How do you live within that halachic framework to be authentic to who you are and not to give up your soul and to have the courage? So here's the truth. Like, I'm often seen as like being at the forefront of certain things, and the truth of the matter is I'm not a maverick. Like, by the time I get to things, you should know this, like LGBTQ, intermarriage and things like that, like, it's taken me a while to get there. And I'm like thinking, like, if I'm here already, like, they're way behind. Like, something's wrong. Like, I'm not at the forefront. I take a long time to think about issues. But at a certain point, you then have to say, look, I don't care. I have to do something. I've got to be authentic. I have to bring people into Judaism. That's always the struggle of rabbis. How do you do that? So I've made a number of people unhappy because sometimes a rabbi has to say no. And sometimes people take out on the rabbi. They can be cruel. And I will tell you, I'll share this. I've never shared it publicly, that except for one time, I've never had a congregant come and apologize. I've never had a congregant come and apologize after they have used me as a sort of manifestation of their unhappiness. One time, a woman came in and said, Rabbi, I just want to apologize. When I responded to you, I was very emotional, and I took it out on you, and I just want to ask your forgiveness. One time. Lessons from Rabbi Camrus. I love Rabbi Camrus. I do. You should know one of the great gifts of coming together has been the relationship. Some of you have heard me say this before. We're so different in our passions and what we love to do. I said, but together, we're the perfect rabbi. Right? Together we are. What have I learned from him? How to truly work in partnership. He has a way of making space and just making people to feel part of that. And knowing when to let go of an issue. Knowing when, and by the way, we say this all the time, we've never had a major disagreement, ever. Ever. Can you imagine? I mean, it really is, like, people we talk to they'll go like, okay, Stewart, really, like, come on, what's it like working with them? I go like, no, seriously, we have never, ever. And they go like, that's remarkable. I think it says a lot about him and as well as about me. What did I learn from my family? First of all, you must imagine that rabbinic life has a tremendous impact on the family, right? Rodi and my kids have given up much. There were times in which we had plans to go out together, and on a Sunday, and I'd say, I'm sorry, I have a funeral. And Rodi would just have to be understanding. Rodi also tried to teach me boundaries, right? She goes, it's okay to say no sometimes. You can't do it all. And creating boundaries for rabbis who love what they do is very hard, you can imagine. Because we love being with people. We don't want to disappoint people. We want to be able to share with them. So Rodi has certainly been amazing. And I want to share this because when you welcome a new rabbi in, I want you to not have any other expectations of their spouse other than that they are a strong support behind the scenes. I'm going to tell you something. That is enough. Okay? I'm just sharing from my heart. What it takes to be a rabbinic spouse is a life of sacrifice in some ways. And when you welcome a new rabbi, I want you to have that appreciation. Do you know it's harder and harder to find rabbis for synagogues? Do you know that? Why? Because, not because there are just fewer rabbis going into it, but the rabbis are not wanting to take on the emotional and physical demands of the job of a synagogue. So what's happening, especially larger synagogues. There's a recent study about it. And so when you welcome a new rabbi, I want you to take care of the rabbi. I want you to make sure that they set boundaries. I want you to make sure that they have a life and health, because if not, they will not be a good rabbi. I was able to do it the way I did it in Rabbi Camrus because we loved it. And I one time said, it was one rabbi, I won't tell you who it was, in the community, said, the reputation is you don't have any boundaries. I go like, oh my God, boundaries. I'm thinking like, what am I being accused of? And I said, what do you mean? And she said that you just, when it comes to work, that you don't have boundaries, right? That you just do so much for your community. So when you get a new rabbi, God willing, I want you to take care of that rabbi and the rabbi's family and to really nurture them in the most important ways. What did my children teach me? They taught me humility, because at home you're not a rabbi. Right? Like, I'd give them an answer from school about, and from Judaic studies. I go like, well, it's this. They go, no, it's not what the teacher said. Right? And my kids never taught me, they never treated me like a rabbi. They taught me humility. They taught me that I'm just a dad, I'm just at home, and I'm going to go through the same source that any father is going to go to. My kids have, I don't know the full impact. They told me later when they were students at Kadima that some teachers, if they answered an answer in class, would say, oh, that's very good. I guess you know that because your father's a rabbi. But if they didn't answer it correctly, they said, like, how can you not know that? Your father's a rabbi. You laugh, but by the way, what is that for a child to hear that? It means it's a no-win situation. Either you know it because you're the rabbi's daughter or son, or because, if you don't know it, like, shame on you. It's rough being the child of a rabbi. If you get a rabbi in here with children, I want you to be very careful. Don't put them in the spotlight. Don't overdo it with them. Let them be them. Let them have their own lives, because the only thing that's going to happen is they're going to rebel from that. All right? I want you to learn that. Rhodey's going like this. We're okay. She didn't really, but should. All right, so you never know what life will bring you. That's I learned as well. Like, you never know what life is going to bring you. I never thought I was going to be a pulpit rabbi. I became a pulpit rabbi. I never imagined that I would write a book, by the way, and some of you know that, like, I ended up co-authoring what became a national bestseller, but it came out of the blue. Right? At that time, Dr. Laura, who had just converted to Judaism, wanted to write a book about conversion, but I said, why don't we write a book on the Ten Commandments? Like, that is applicable to Jews and non-Jews. And so I wrote up an outline for it, and this never happens, like, it can't happen in the real world. 24 hours later, we had a contract for, like, a major book because of her name. But I never, like, thought that I would, write a book. And so when I approach, now people ask me all the time, so what are you going to do now? And what I'm going to tell you is I have no idea. And not in a bad way. Here's what I actually say. I want to be bored for once. The first thing I want is I want to be the place to be able to say, I am bored. Like, someone tell me what that feels like, right? Because as a rabbi, you just, like, never. In fact, those of you know about my list. If you, like, by the way, if you ever want to look at my desk, it is a Post-it party on my desk. Like, it is covered with Post-its, and then I have a list of things. I have to do it by hand. And then I keep writing, and who's sick, and who's not this, and who am I going to miss, and what do I have to do? And I never, ever finish that list. A good day is when the list is shorter than when it started. That's all. Just when it's, right? It's shorter than when it started. I'm blessed. I feel like I've had a blessed life as a rabbi because I've had the most amazing people. I really feel badly for rabbis who are in congregations where they don't feel that. Most of the rabbis I know do have that. There's a great, I'll finish with a teaching, and then if you have questions, those of you who want to leave and go home, you can as well. It's from the Talmud Ta'anit, attributed to Rabbi Hanina. Harbe lamadti me rabbatai me chaverai yoter mehem umi talmidai yoter mekulam. Much have I learned from my teachers and from my colleagues, more than from my teachers, but from my students I learned most of all. And you've all been my students, if you will, and I just want to thank you for an amazing rabbinic life experience. So thank you. Yeah. You're going to make me leave and walk out. That's very sweet. Okay. All right. That's so sweet. I love you all. All right. Do we have time for questions? I don't want, or you can, if you have to go home, please do not let anything stop you. You're not being rude. You're not doing anything. What time is it? Is it 10:30 yet? Okay. Question. Where did I go to high school? I went to Taft High School. Taft High School with Julie Devine. I went to Portola Junior High School before it was a middle school. Yes. Let's take 2 questions if there are, and then I don't want to prolong this evening. Who's a question? There's somebody. Erwin, question. What made me decide to be a pulpit rabbi? It was a notice on a board that said, you can have an apartment. By the way, to tell you how disconnected I was from the East Coast, Roy and I drove cross country. Those of you from back east will know this now. We were asking, where is Mamaroneck Road? Now, if you're from back east, you know it's Mamaroneck. But we're Hicks. We don't know anything. They go, you mean Mamaroneck Road? And they're like, oh, yes. I felt you remember that moment? Okay, any other question? One other question? Sina. Oh, we got 1, 2, 3. Go ahead. How do I remember the names of everybody? You actually hear what I tell you. It's not a gift. You have to work at it. You have to care enough about people to want to learn their names, and it is work. Some people have tricks and other things, but really it is you just have to keep knowing them. And for me, I love. It's important to know names. Eileen, talk about my relationship to. Yeah. With the Cantors. Yeah, so I want to here's what I want to tell you. Thank you. I've been blessed to have amazing Cantors throughout my life. In Temple Aliyah. You want to hear a funny story? All right. The rabbi who was in White Plains who remained nameless. Before my first Shabbat, I said, what time should I be at services? He said, certainly not by 9:15. That's what time services started. I go, oh, okay. So I go, okay, so I came at 9:30. He still wasn't there. I recognized that his tradition was to come right before the Torah service, walk up on the bima to announce the pages for the Torah service, and then to begin the whole service. And so about 6 months into, maybe 5 months that I was there, they're getting to the Torah service, and he's not there yet. Not there. The cantor who was up there goes like this. He's waving his hand for me to come up, and I go like this. And he goes like this a second time. And I'm out there. I'm in the 9th row out there, but he's he can't look at me, he can't make it obvious, but he's going, I know who he's talking to. So the 3rd time, I figure I better get up there. So I got up there, I announced the page, we walked down with the Torah, and the rabbi just joined into line and came around. I also learned, here's another thing, by the way, I learned from Rabbi Shoyce and from him, never show that something's going wrong. Right? So by the way, Rabbi Shoyce, we talk about the high holidays, where there's a really strict timeline. You think there's problems with timeline. He said, look, I don't care if you're skipping 30 pages, never make it feel rushed. Never make it feel rushed. And I learned something about not creating that feeling there. I've been blessed with Cantor Herschel Fox, of course, Jackie Mendelson, who's a legend in the rabbinic community, who you love, who I worked with in White Plains, New York, was amazing. And I've been blessed with Mike Stein and Chazan Mimi, and now with Cantor Jenny. Here's what I've learned, honestly, is rabbis need to take care of their cantors. It's a partnership, right? You need to be in sync. And there's too many synagogues where they are adversarial, fighting for attention. You need to be a team that share and respect and love each other, and to never throw somebody under the bus. And I've just been blessed. Thank you for the best cantors, really, ever. Give a hand for the cantors. Yeah. All right. I feel like people are saying I want to go home, but I see 2 questions. Kevin asked me a question. Came to Temple Aliyah from VBS. So it's a good moment. Valley Bet Shalom didn't want me to leave. Rabbi Schulweis wasn't yet retiring, and actually in the end wouldn't retire for a while. And I had to have a moment of self-reflection to say, I don't think I'm the right rabbi to lead Valley Bet Shalom. I just say, look, I had to let go of ego. I said, to be there would have been an amazing thing, but I had to realize that mega community was not the rabbinate I wanted. I wanted to be able to know congregants by name, right? I wanted to be the cheers, if you will, of synagogue life and to be able to welcome people in. So when it opened up, I applied, and Natalie Elbaum was on the search committee there, and Ellen Severin, and it was, I think, love at first sight, but it's been an amazing run. So that's how I ended up at Temple Aliyah. Last question, Jeff. It better be good. There's a lot of pressure. Oh, we got another one. Go ahead. Seth, I'm here. Not to be morbid. Uh-oh, you're going there. Hold on. My wife? Let Rhodey introduce her. Give Rhodey a hand. There you go. All right. That had nothing to do with being morbid. I just want to make sure that there was no connection being made there. A lot of funerals. Untimely deaths, yes. Right? How do I not lose faith in God? This is a class in theology, right? Here's what I'll tell you. Those experiences have helped me actually have more faith in God. In the sense that God is not what I imagine God to be. The hardest paper I ever wrote in rabbinical school was in Rabbi Dr. Neil Gilman's class about God, theology. You can only make it 2 pages, and you couldn't use any quotes from any sources. It had to be you. And you begin to type it out and do everything, and you go like, if I believe that, how do I believe that? If I believe that, I believe that. I truly believe that you don't have a strong theology until you've been through a theological crisis. It's easy to believe in God until you're confronted with some other reality. So I've learned that God doesn't cause those illnesses, but I've learned that there are illnesses at work in the world, that the world is not a perfect place where the good are always rewarded and the evil are always punished. That's not God's role to do. That's our job, is to make the world into the place that is in the image of God, like Aleinu. And so it's actually helped me to affirm and to grow into what I believe God is, if that makes sense. Last question. Wait. Oh, over here, Ben. Don't you guys want to go home? Go ahead, Ben.
Would you consider applying for the new senior rabbi?
Would I consider applying for this? When Rhodey's going, no! No, the question was, would I consider applying for the senior rabbi position? Look, you will. Here's what I'm going to tell you. Do not look for a rabbi who's going to be like me or Rabbi Cameras. Because you'll be disappointed. You have to find a rabbi that has some unique quality that you believe can be nurtured, and you help them become the rabbi they will become. You help me become the rabbi that I have become. That's your job, is to help them. But do not compare them to us, or to, you have to find their uniqueness. So I pray when when you're interviewing, do not say, oh, they're not like Rabbi Cameras, they're not like Rabbi Vogel, right? There is that story of Zusia, the Chassid, right, who's crying on his deathbed. And why are you crying? When I go to heaven, I'm not afraid that God's going to ask me like Moses, and why was not like Moses? Or why weren't you like Abraham and not like Abraham? I'm afraid God's going to ask me, why were you not more like Zusia? And I won't know what to answer, right? Every person's unique. You will find a rabbi, God willing, with unique qualities, and you will nurture that rabbi and help them become the rabbi that will be loved in the community. That is going to be your job. I'm going to give you the last one, sir. Overall comment. Right. I had to decide whether I was going to leave Valley of Shalom or not, or to think about even taking over. Go ahead. Yes. Yes. Yeah, so Rabbi Feinstein, so you know what's really interesting? There's this rumor that Rabbi Feinstein and I were actually at Valley of Shalom together for a year, and it was kind of like a showdown, like a shootout, where it's like, this synagogue ain't big enough for both of us. So there's this, and there's nothing like that at all. We actually collaborated. What happened, he was, here's a good story for a moment, just a quick one, is that he was the director at Camp Ramah, and I didn't know, look, I wasn't looking to leave Valley of Shalom. Here's an opportunity. By the way, other synagogues had become open, Temple Aliyah people, and I did not apply to them. I believe that there's something at Temple Aliyah that had potential. And it's the only synagogue that I had applied. And I'd been asked to apply to other synagogues, and I did not. And so we arranged behind the scenes that if I was offered the job at Aliyah, that Rabbi Feinstein would actually then apply and de facto would be given the job. But that first summer of 1993, I was the sole rabbi of two synagogues, Valley of Shalom and Temple Aliyah. Because Rabbi Feinstein was at Camp Ramah. He had that obligation. I was a rabbi at both synagogues. I had to do funerals for both synagogues. I did every other Shabbat at the different synagogues for that first summer. I will tell you what, Rabbi Schwartz, you want to know how amazing he was? He would always take the whole summer off, July and August. The whole summer. It's like the week before I come talk to him, I said, and it's like June 28th. He goes, and I think July 1st was Friday night. And he goes, have a great summer. If you need anything, just give me a call. I go, what? You're leaving with a congregation of 1,800 families and you're gone for 2 months? But that's he had confidence in people. He didn't worry, and he knew that you have to support and people will grow into what they're going to become. So I want to just thank you all. It's been a lovely evening, and thank you.